So Leon Edwards versus Khamzat Chimaev has now been cancelled again for the third time, and the UFC has also stated that since Khamzat has come down with the Rona syndrome and he needs to recover, they are going to be working on a different fight for both of these men, Khamzat Chimaev and Leon Edwards individually. They will not be fighting each other again, so at the end of this video, we're going to be discussing who they should come back against each. But one thing I want to talk about first and get straight into is, Dana White said the fight that they are working on right now as a title elimination bout for Leon Edwards is Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards, and they are going to try and work to make that fight happen next. I'm going to give my early prediction and breakdown on that contest, and also my thoughts on that contest being made, because now, once again, it seems like we are not going to get to see Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal, despite it being 100% the most highest building and hyped up fight in the welterweight division overall to this day. I don't know why the UFC is trying everything they can to not allow this fight to happen. It feels that way sometimes, but let's talk about Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Let me just gather my saliva real quick. We're good. Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington is the fight they want to make next, and I do believe that Colby Covington would get the job done against Leon Edwards. Colby Covington is no stranger to a short notice turn up. I mean, he took the Robbie Lawler fight on 4 weeks notice and went 5 hard rounds with him and set a pace record in that fight at the time of that fight against Robbie Lawler as well, with an output record. So he's definitely got cardio in the tank for a short notice bout. So I do believe that Colby Covington would go out there and ragdoll Leon Edwards for 5 rounds. Maybe not 5 rounds. Maybe Leon Edwards would cash in with some shots, maybe steal a round from Colby Covington at one point, who knows. But I do believe that Colby Covington would win the grappling exchanges too dominantly in the bout and just out-grapple Leon Edwards in the bout. And I feel like when you grapple Leon Edwards offensively, it does affect his gas tank a different way, because Leon Edwards only works in fights as much as he needs to work. He's a very patient guy. Some people have criticised him for this. Some people don't like his fighting style because it's not the most entertaining or action-packed in the world, because he does just enough to stay ahead. We saw that in the Rafael Dos Anjos fight, which was closer than some people think, and so was Colby Covington versus RDA as well, so I'm not going to hold that against Leon Edwards. However, in that fight with RDA, Leon Edwards did just enough to get himself the win in every single round other than one of them. I had it 4-1 Edwards, and it was a great performance, but I feel like when Colby Covington is in there against Leon Edwards, Edwards is not going to be able to do just enough to get by. He's going to have to work at Colby Covington's pace, like he had to work against Kamaru Usman's pace earlier in his career, and in that third round against Kamaru Usman, he was basically completely done, because Usman was just putting on a pace on him and making him defend takedowns and making him work constantly, and Leon Edwards did not like working to the beat of someone else's tune, and I think that's exactly what Colby Covington would do to him: out-grapple him, make him work on defending takedowns. Even if Leon Edwards does defend a couple of takedowns like he did against Kamaru Usman before, I still believe that the pace of Colby Covington returning to those takedowns afterwards and keeping on going to those takedowns with his very volume-heavy takedown game would eventually wear out Leon Edwards into those later rounds, and Colby would eventually maybe get a late rounds TKO, or I'd say a decision maybe instead. But Leon Edwards is very dangerous for Colby Covington right now, because Leon Edwards, we don't know how good he is right now. The last Leon Edwards we saw was a 27-year-old guy that beat Rafael Dos Anjos at welterweight, and a lot of that fight was on the feet as well. Against Rafael Dos Anjos on the feet at welterweight. A lot of guys have beaten RDA at welterweight, but a lot of them have done it by taking him to the ground and beating him there. In Michael Chiesa, in Kamaru Usman, in Colby Covington, Leon Edwards was very impressive at 27. He's now 29, so there's a lot of an unknown factor with Leon Edwards here. He could come back and maybe establish himself as maybe the best welterweight in the division, and we're all of a sudden talking about him after beating Colby Covington, maybe going on to beat the winner of Usman versus Burns. I just don't think he's going to make that much of a dramatic improvement. He's been in the game for a very long time now. He's made improvements over the years, but as I said before, he always seems to do just enough. And I think when you're playing that game of fighting and a guy makes you work to the beat of his drum, you can't do just enough anymore. You have to do just enough to survive rather than just enough to win yourself around, because he did the same thing again before the RDA fight against Gunnar Nelson, if you'll remember. That split decision on his record. A lot of people wonder why it was a split decision, including me. I had it a clear win for Leon Edwards. I don't know how the judges didn't see that first round for Leon Edwards. He outlanded Gunnar Nelson by a little bit. He outgrappled Gunnar Nelson by a little bit. But it was clear that Leon Edwards had done enough to win that first round of that bout. Then in the second round, round. Again, very close. Leon Edwards winning the round. Lands the elbow at the end. Scores himself a nice little round there. That's 2 rounds to Leon Edwards. Then in the 3rd round, he basically gives up top control and lets Gunnar Nelson mount him in round 3 for the last 2 minutes of the fight because he knows he's won. I don't think you can play those games with Colby Covington setting his pace on you. I don't think he can edge out these rounds against Colby Covington because Covington is not there to edge out rounds. He's there to win a fight overall over 25 minutes. And I think that's going to be a real problem in this bout. I think Edwards has got great stand-up. And also another thing I want to mention, if you might pick Edwards here, this is a good bet for you. He might slice open Colby Covington's eye, because I don't know if you guys remember this. I was talking about this a while ago for a maybe potential Covington versus Edwards matchup. Colby Covington has a nasty, nasty gash over his eye. After the Robbie Lawler bout, I believe. No, it was before the Robbie Lawler bout. He cut open his eye in sparring, a massive slit right across his eyelid, sealed it up afterwards, took the Robbie Lawler fight anyway, hid it from the doctors. There was a whole thing about how he had to put makeup on it, and the makeup lady helped him get past the athletic commission to even get to the fight with Robbie Lawler because he wanted to secure his title shot against Kamaru Usman. However, that cut still exists above Colby Covington's eye, and Leon Edwards in that clinch is no joke with those elbows, so there could be an opportunity for him maybe to land a nice elbow on that eye and split it open the way he did against RDA. I feel like every single opponent of Leon Edwards, even if he beats them by a narrow margin, always looks terrible in the facial region. I mean, Gunnar Nelson had a swollen orbital, Donald Cerrone was sliced open by Leon Edwards' elbows, RDA was sliced open by Leon Edwards' elbows. He always catches people with that elbow, and I think he might do against Colby Covington. I do worry there about a cut opening up, and maybe the ringside physician is kind of a Biden guy. You never know, who knows, but still, I think Covington would beat him over the 5 rounds, out-grapple him, because as much as I like Leon Edwards, and I know that he did well against RDA, it's a completely different situation trying to be a striker and play that range game on the feet when you've got a guy who you know can take you down and is going to be trying to take you down every second that the fight exists for. I think Covington having that advantage of Edwards knowing that Covington wants to take him to the ground would do well on the feet, then chaining his takedowns and win the fight overall. I think Covington looked good against Woodley on the feet as well, landed some great body kicks, a couple of good punches as well. I know the commentary didn't really mention it. I think like the commentary at one point in the fight with Covington and Woodley saw Covington land a clean 1-2 on the chin of Woodley, and then Anik said something like, maybe Woodley's trying to lure him in here. No, Covington was just beating him the same way Burns and Usman did. I think Covington would beat Leon Edwards, but I don't want to see this fight happen, man. Why is this fight happening? It doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever to make this fight. Why on God's good earth are they so persistent every single week to stop Masvidal versus Covington happening? I'm starting to get so annoyed, because the only way to bring back TUF in style and with a bang is to have Masvidal versus Covington as coaches. I know it's happening in summer, but they're going to start recording it, I suppose, in April or May. If Covington loses, they still do the fight then. If Covington wins, he's going to want a title shot. So, like, they're not going to do the fight then. If Masvidal loses his next bout, I don't think he'll ever fight Covington ever again, because he won't be anywhere near him in the rankings. I just don't understand why they would not do anything they possibly could to make this fight. This is a guaranteed 1 million pay-per-views. If Masvidal versus Usman sold 1.3 million, I know it was the first fight on Fight Island and had a great card underneath it as well. You put a decent card under Masvidal versus Covington, it sells 1 million pay-per-views. It just does. The storyline is there. They used to be best friends, now they're enemies. They used to be training partners, now they're not. There's beef, there's intensity. They weren't just best friends. They shared a couch, they shared women. I mean, they shared everything with each other. They probably shared saliva sometimes. I don't know what they get up to in their off time, but you know, things happen sometimes when you're a bit drunk. But still, I think it's a very good fight. I don't know why they keep trying. Why would you initially jump to Colby Covington? And you know what else I don't like about this whole fucking situation here? The arrogance of Dana White and the absurdity of ignoring Wonderboy's name. Wonderboy Thompson called out Leon Edwards to replace him in this bout and said he might need a little bit more time for the bout to happen, though, maybe in April or May. Why when Dana White was listing potential people to take on Leon Edwards, would he just not mention Wonderboy's name, the top contender coming off 2 great wins against top 10 contenders at the time? Why is Wonderboy being ignored? I think they should do Leon Edwards versus Wonderboy Thompson. Put it on the April pay-per-view in Singapore? No? Am I wrong here? I don't even care. They've got Cyril Gane versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik as the main event of a fucking fight night. They did Aya versus Calvillo last year as well. I will watch your cards, UFC. Okay? I don't care if it's Dan Ige versus some short notice replacement on the card as the main event. I will watch that card regardless. If they need to wait a couple of more weeks to make Leon Edwards versus Stephen Thompson and ensure that Covington versus Masvidal actually happens, then do it, man. Who else is going to be on Tough? Who? Figueiredo Moreno? No, they're not going to be on Tough, are they? They're not at all. Zhang Wei Li versus Rose Namajunas? No. There's no one. Israel Adesanya John Jones isn't going to be happening anytime soon, so that's not going to happen. I can't even think. Maybe Whitaker Costa. I don't even want to think. The only thing that could possibly be on Tough is Covington versus Masvidal. And 2 days ago, Dana White said, we're working on 2 top-ranked welterweights on the season of The Ultimate Fighter. So did Masvidal say no, and Covington's now being gifted a title elimination bout because of it? Because I'm assuming if Covington said no to Tough, then they would maybe offer Masvidal to Leon Edwards on short notice and try and work on that one. Did Masvidal turn down Tough against Colby Covington? Because I'll tell you this, it has seemed like for a couple of weeks now that Jorge Masvidal does not want to take on Colby Covington, and we all know why. Because we've seen those videos online of Jorge getting ragdolled, but we need to find opponents for both of them. I feel like they should do Leon Edwards versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and they should also do, for Khamzat Chimaev, I know this sounds a little bit crazy, an unranked welterweight. He's pulled out of 2 fights. For whatever reason, he ignored the doctors. He doesn't want to wear a mask. He didn't want to take the time off. He wanted to get straight back into sparring. This isn't just him catching Rona again. It's him not recovering well enough in the first place. That's kind of on his own stupidity of handling his career the wrong way. So, let's do Khamzat Chimaev versus a guy like Miguel Beza, Mikel Pereira, Nico Price. There are so many great names just outside the rankings at welterweight, and we can actually see Khamzat Chimaev take on a welterweight in the UFC because he's ranked number 15 in the division and he hasn't yet done it. He's ranked number 15 in the welterweight division. He might have moved out of those rankings now, who knows. He was ranked number 15, or still is, in the welterweight division, and his only win over a welterweight is a lightweight from Cage Warriors in Reese McKee, who's now cut from the UFC because he lost to Alex fucking Moreno. Please, give Khamzat Chimaev someone reasonable. I do not mind the idea of a Damian Maia bout at a push, and I'm not going to take too much of a push. At a push, I don't mind the idea of a Damian Maia bout, especially if Maia agrees to it. There's not much else to do. If they offer it and Maia agrees to it, that's okay. Let's do that one instead. It was going to be booked anyway. They were going to do the fight anyway after the Gerald Meerschaert one. Let's use that as storyline to build over to the Damian Maia bout. It should be maybe Khamzat versus Maia. Covington Edwards is such a dumb idea. Just make Covington Masvidal. Please, for the love of God, make Covington Masvidal. I've wanted to see it for 3 years. I wanted to see it when they were both on the come up as friends. Eventually, I wanted to see them both fight for the title as friends. Didn't even know there was beef between them at the time. There wasn't any beef between them at the time. They were best friends. I watched the Genghis Khan films of them chilling with each other. They were both my favourite duo at the time in MMA. Why can't we have that fight? And why does it feel like every other week the UFC is trying not to make that bout? Oh wait, they probably want Masvidal to take on Nate Diaz in a rematch next, so he can easily win and then get his name back in the spotlight. I'm pissed off. But all good. Oh yeah, and Ryan Hall was being ducked, so he fucking pulled out of his fight with Dan Ige, and now he's calling out Jeremy Stevens already, and he's supposed to be injured, so... The whole MMA world is pissing me off. But whatever. Like and subscribe. Click that button up there. Chimaev versus Maia or Nico Price or Pereira. And then also do Covington versus Masvidal and Leon Edwards versus Wonderboy Thompson on the main card of the pay-per-view at UFC 261 in Singapore. And then just do something else as the main event. I don't care. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. See you later.